Hey guys, thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
Chris Emke.
And you're listening or watching Diesel Performance Podcast.
I like how you did the watching.
Yeah. So we are out in another ride-along here today. We told you guys a little bit about it last week. Really excited to be in this truck. Chris, I think you and I have both driven this truck a handful of times prior to this. So we have quite a bit of experience. Why don't you give them a rundown of what this vehicle is?
Yeah, so it's a 2015 Sierra 2500 GMC Denali. Currently has like 70,000 miles on it, maybe 80,000 miles, regardless. It has a XRG 10mm CP4 pump.
Yep.
Fast 165 gallon per hour lift pump, sump to go along with it. It has a DT 750 trans with a Garand X triple disc torque converter in it. It has one of our us along with WC Fab developed an emissions on twin turbo system directly for the 15-16 LMLs.
Yeah.
Which is a stock turbo in the Valley, and then it runs an S369 SXE over it.
Which is small for our normal daily driver towing twin kit, but this works really well.
Yeah, I think when, the S475, the S480 compound overstock back in the day came out, there really wasn't a smaller turbo a smaller package turbo that could flow the air.
Right.
The SXE lineup came out a couple years ago from Borg Warner. They all come with factory FMW wheels, which is like a billet wheel, and the technology is greatly advanced. So we're able to put a 369, which is going to package better in the engine bay, especially for a truck that has the emissions.
Right.
Still has the factory battery in the factory location. We're not relocating any of that stuff, and still be able to flow the air volume. With that, you're going to have a turbocharger that, since it's a little smaller, but still capable of providing the air volume in the mid and the higher RPM range, so we're not lacking power. We're going to get a turbocharger that's going to come into boost a little quicker than what the 400 would have been, so there's an easier or smoother transition from the small turbo into the bigger atmospheric turbo.
There's also a wider range of efficient air, which is just the nature of a compound turbo kit. What's really cool about this one is, like you said, Chris, we know these emissions-equipped trucks, right now with today's technology, are probably not going to go to 750, 800 horsepower, which is what we see out of an S475 stocker kit. These trucks are going to go to 600, 650, but they're going to tow. They're going to work. They're going to really get pushed hard. It's not about peak power for this truck.
No.
Jamie's happy to be in the 600 horsepower club. The owner of the truck, Jamie, happy to be there. Calls himself the president of the club. That's great. He's not looking to go drag racing. He tows a giant RV fifth wheel, 15, on the back of this.
16,000 pounds. I mean, the reality of it is this guy's performance is awesome. I think that's why a good handful of us got into the diesel pickup game in the first place.
Sure.
But the reality of it is diesel pickups are here for, towing and different workloads and recreational purposes, things like that. And this is kind of one of those debuts of, we know this kit makes over 700 horse. We've done that in the past.
Yeah.
And this truck is going to live a very long, healthy life at that 6,650 number where, the truck is currently at. There's still more left in this truck, too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more peak power to go.
We could push this truck a little further, but, from the guidelines of, versatility in the workload with the truck, I think we're in a really, really good happy medium, if you will. So I'm going to get on it a little bit here. Trans downshifted. Oh, God.
And that's the thing. It's just like we always say with a twin kit is they're so smooth. The transition of power, it's not that big single hit, which hey, I get it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great thing to do when you're 18 to throw a big single on your truck and just let all that power ramp up and hit you at once. This, it just feels like there's always more pedal. It doesn't matter how hard you lean on it, what RPM you're at, what speed you're at, no matter what you do in this truck, and this is what we find in most of our appropriately sized street-style twin-turbo trucks, is you can always lean on it, and it feels like you can always go farther. And that's just a lot of fun, man. It just makes the truck a blast to drive from day to day.
Well, I think one of the big misperceptions, and I've brought this up in the past with guys that call in or email in or whatever, I want to build this, but I don't want a race truck. Okay, well, I recommend this part. Well, my buddy has that on his, and he has a race truck, In the diesel world, there's a lot of different components that are versatile for different applications.
Yeah.
So, adding a lift pump on a truck that's going to be more performance-oriented is awesome because of the features and benefits, but it's also going to be very utilizable for a stock truck or for someone that's not going to be as an aggressive horsepower number and is still looking for better efficiency, reliability. Twin turbos, yeah, oh my God, you have twin turbos, you have a fast truck. Well, yes, twin turbo trucks are generally going to be able to create more power because of the air volume there, but when you piece the fuel system and the air system together to work in a certain manner,
right,
you're setting that truck up to work a certain way.
Well, purpose built. I think that's what we're talking about, right? Is this truck was designed for not just a singular purpose, but with a set of priorities that made sense for the owner of the truck. You know, like we said, Jamie tows very heavy when he does tow, and then other than that, he daily drives it. He's just back and forth. You know, it's probably doesn't break 60, 65 miles an hour most weeks. Like, just he goes weeks without having to drive, you know, at super high speeds or to tow something very heavy. So it's about having it when you need it, and then also having something that is going to feel like it's a lot of fun, because I know we got some young guys in the shop who try to get on this truck on the side-by-side, and it's a hard one to beat, man.
I mean,
it's just to be real. We don't want to tell, please, nobody tell Jamie we said this.
I mean, he'll see it.
I don't know.
He'll
see if he can figure out his phone. But but yeah, but it's one of those that this is that kind of setup. And let's go through these parts and just kind of talk about why each one of these was added.
Yeah.
So I believe the lift pump was the first thing done. The lift pump and tuning were like the first thing. So tuning's always going to give you the most bang for your buck. There's just no way around it.
Truck. Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And the lift pump holds a lot of significant value as far as fuel filtration, water separation, you know, offering a more consistent, you know, fuel flow to the CP4 pump or CP3 for that matter.
Especially on an LML.
Yeah, I mean,
especially, we know about CP4 failures. There's no mystery. We're not hiding anything there.
I mean, I'd even go a step further than that and saying, especially for a Duramax.
Yeah.
01 to 16 Duramaxes do not have lift pumps in the tank or supply pumps in the tank like various other manufacturers offer. So I think that's one of the big values that you know, these trucks would benefit from. So,
absolutely.
Usually, you know, when we're talking about upgrades, lift pump and tuning on one of these trucks with a sump, that's numero uno.
Yeah.
First round.
Absolutely. And then the built trans was done preemptively. Usually at an LML, you could stretch out this trans to an easy 550 horsepower. We see a lot of guys running at 600 horsepower, maybe even squeezing that 640, 650 number out of it. It's a question of how long will it last. You know, Jamie is big, and when you guys next week watch, or last week, I forget where we fell in rotation here, but when you guys are looking through like the recreational towing video we did with Jamie.
That'll be after this.
Yeah, okay, that'll be after this. That'll be next week. You guys can actually hear where he talks about like the last thing you want is to have the whole family packed into the vehicle on your way to a vacation with your 40-foot fifth wheel hitch on the back, and then have a breakdown.
Well, I think
like
that's
just, it's a nightmare of a scenario.
That falls back to the episode that we did last week where we were talking about, you know, preventative maintenance for going into winter.
Yeah.
You know, it takes one time to be stranded on the side of the road, and something as stupid as I should have done this, or something that you knew about and you wanted to cheap out. Try being married, guys. Try having kids and having to answer to them. Like, that's a tough one.
Right. And so that's one of those things. This trans, yeah, it could stretch a lot further. He did it preemptively, and I think it made a lot of sense for him because he knew he was also going to throw a twin kit on it. He knew he was going to run down the track once or twice a year. He knew he was going to work next to a bunch of 20-something-year-olds who want to try to race him in their LLYs. You know, he knew that this truck was going to get some legs stretched on it, right? And so if that's the case, yeah, go ahead, throw the trans in it. And I think around that time is also when he did the traction bars.
You know, traction bars keep the rear end planted. It's more or less a stability thing. That's an insurance policy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the last round of parts, of course, that's where all the magic really comes to life.
Well, then we get under that. Then I would say we get into a different cost tier and a different performance tier, right? Because different you're running goals. All that on a stock CP4 and a stock turbo, which that truck that we just described is a solid 500, 520, 550 horsepower truck, depending on where we lean on it or what dyno we're on. And it's going to be a blast. Most guys are going to be like, this is all I ever wanted out of a vehicle.
Downfalls at that power level, though, turbochargers out of lung. You like the added power in a max effort scenario, but it's not smart to tow at that power level because of the turbocharger's inefficiency to provide air volume. So there are things there that, you know, now you have to be a little bit more weary on as far as, you know, how the truck operates.
Right.
Again, the last round of parts, it's a different price tier. You know, we're going from $1,000 tuner, $1,000 fuel lift pump to, you know, $1,000 set of traction bars, you're good. Then you throw a $5,000 trans in it like he did, prepping himself for the $5,000 turbo kit and a couple $1,000 injection pump.
Right.
But those two modifications under the hood, being the CP4 10mm from Exergy Performance and the twin turbo emissions on kit from WC Fab Duramax Tuner, took that truck from a warm running 550 horsepower truck that when towing you're probably around 450 to a truck that can make 650 wheel horsepower, tow at 500 wheel horsepower, run extremely efficient, broaden the torque curve, broaden the torque curve, allow the engine to come into boost at a very early RPM and maintain that boost curve to just allow the truck to do what it was designed to do from the factory in my opinion, a much more efficient manner.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And so like we say, you know, we know this is a little bit different tier of performance and a different tier of cost, but if that's what you're after, if you went out and you bought the Denali because you like to have the really nice, the best version, you know, of that vehicle, and then you tow and you are in those extreme circumstances and you're like, man, what I want out of my truck is something a little bit more. Those options are out there. You know, we can do that too. The other fun thing is, like, right now we're just on the back roads cruising at a very reasonable speed, and the truck drives great, man. It is silent. You hear the lift pump probably more than anything. I can hear the turbos when you lay on it. You can hear
the secondary charger come to life once you really, you know.
But not much. It's not like overbearing. There's no drone. If it wasn't 30 degrees out, we'd ride with the windows down. There'd be no drone. You wouldn't be able to hear this thing. It doesn't smell up like just, you can park it in your garage and let it run for a few minutes and it doesn't reek like diesel fumes. There are advantages to having your truck set up with the emissions equipment.
I think the biggest thing that really isn't discussed, because emissions on twin turbo trucks really aren't like a staple in the industry right now.
Sure.
And I think the big thing that a lot of listeners and a lot of customers ask, or potential customers ask, is, well, you're making this type of power, but what's regen cycles? You know,
that's a great point.
So, you know, one of the things, you know, I myself, I'm very blessed. I have the luxury of having a twin turbo Cummins, very similar setup, very similar power level. Me and Jamie have similar miles. We tow similar weights, right? So we use the truck very similarly. This, I think, it drives a little nicer as far as the Allison transmission is concerned, considering or compared to my RevMax 68. So that is what that is. But you know, two different trucks, but at the same time, regen cycles. So a factory truck, I would say on average regens what, every 350 miles?
Yeah, I'd say probably a little bit more than that. It should be more than that, but yeah.
Then we go and we tune the truck. You know, we work with lambda limitations, air fuel limitations. We work with how the truck comes into its boost curve to maintain or to manipulate the fuel that the engine is given, if you will.
Right.
And I would say with a tuned emissions on truck, if the truck is healthy, we could see 400, 450 miles in between cycles.
Yeah.
Right? Then we go into the twins, bigger injection pump, ask a little bit more fuel volume.
Making more power.
More power. And the trucks, I mean, my 2015 Cummins regens, I would say on average every 800, 900 miles.
Yeah.
Jamie's on average is between 700 and 800.
Yeah.
You know, so we always talk, you know, when we go on these trips or, you know, we're towing, whatever. Oh, when did your truck regen last? He's like, well, when did yours regen last? You know, so, you know, we compare penis sizes from time to time.
Well, of course. And one thing we will say is we know that trucks will get a longer distance between regen if you're towing.
Yep.
So if you're a guy who drives empty and you're like 800 miles between regen and the only way I ever drive my truck is, you know, 4 miles down the road a day, well, you're never going to see that, right? Short trip in the truck really hurts you on regen frequency. Being under highway speed, like anytime you're driving around in town 30, 45 miles an hour, hurts your regen frequency. So if you can get out on the highway and get a load behind this thing, it's going to build heat in the exhaust. You're going to get a passive regen for a lot of that. That's why you're getting so long between active regens, is the truck is just organically or naturally building the heat it needs to standard, just kind of burn off some of that soot as you go. And so that's going to be a huge help. Now, driving unloaded, I'd imagine you guys probably aren't seeing 800 or 900 miles or 700 or 800 miles between regens. My guess is you'd be closer to that 400 to 500, which is one thing I notice is that stock trucks, in my experience, generally, I'd say 300 to 500. 300 maybe on the higher mileage, like LML or early generation Cummins, things like that. But you know, your standard 15 Denali with a reasonable amount of miles like this. Turn left before the light here. We're gonna go meet Justin. But yeah, a vehicle like this, I would say I would expect about 400 to 500 miles between regens. which is right in line, man. I mean, to be honest with you, same thing as DEF usage. That's the other one. I always get guys asking, well, doesn't it use twice the amount of DEF because you're making, you know, almost twice the horsepower, right? Well, no.
I mean, that
it just
is consumed by NOx production, so that's more or less workload that the truck is under.
So it's understanding how to balance the EGR. When we use the EGR, we reduce the NOx emissions. That's why we have EGRs, right? That's the whole science behind it. Using the inert gas from the exhaust, using air that has already had all the oxygen burnt out of it, makes it inert gas. We then use that inert gas, put it back into the intake. Now we hear a lot of guys say, well, you're pumping dirty exhaust back into your intake. My first question is, why is your exhaust dirty? Like, if you've tuned it properly with the air, fuel, and lambda limitations up front, you shouldn't have a lot of smoke coming out of your exhaust. Is there going to be some residual? Of course, yeah, there's going to be a little bit, but you shouldn't have a bunch of dirt and soot being poured out of your exhaust pipes. So using that inert gas under those circumstances makes a lot of sense. It actually, it helps the truck reduce NOx. So we're not changing the things that would increase your NOx emissions. Therefore, we shouldn't be changing your DEF usage. Like tuned, stock, 600 horsepower, 400 horsepower, 500. If it's tuned properly, they should all use the same amount of DEF.
I'm gonna take a second here. We're gonna pull off to the side. Figure we'd switch seats. Let you get behind the wheel.
Absolutely, Can't wait to drive it. This thing a little bit here.
So for our listeners and viewers, Paul's used to driving like 150 horsepower BMW. Rarely does he get to drive anything with some decent power, so I'm nervous.
Oh, come on.
No, like I'm really nervous.
We've done, how many ride-alongs have we done?
But you almost killed me in the Apache, you almost killed me in the Burb.
Not true.
The Hummer, I felt comfortable because there was enough, you know, things around me to save me.
That's funny because the Hummer, we almost really died.
Yeah, you. That was a you thing.
Well, they weren't going to hit my side. No, come on, the Apache, you're so dramatic. I got into a burnout one time in an Apache ride-along. The truck started wheel hopping. I backed out of the throttle, and Chris tells the story as I almost killed us.
The truck jackknifed, things went really south. No, it wasn't that bad, but...
we have video.
I don't want to be in the oh shit situation with you, and I don't trust that you can correct
don't hit the camera, because I know the camera's right by the oh shit handle there, so don't hit the camera. No, listen, this truck is just a blast to drive. Regular cabs, always been my thing. They feel so light that, you know, you almost don't know you're a truck.
Let's give the listeners the reference to the regular cab, right?
Yeah.
So your claim to fame, your favorite truck in the entire world, the truck that you had to have before you started a family was a regular cab LML.
100%.
And you settled for a SUV
Everything
diesel because you decided to get married and have children.
Right. Check.
Okay, guys, note to self.
So so send me your regular cabs and I will test drive them for you for a month at a time.
But he can't because he has a family and children, so he can only drive it every so often.
You suck.
I'm just calling it how I see it, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. So I'm in a family car. I have to drive a family car. That's just the way it is.
But this is to be like the ultimate family vehicle.
This really does make you think like, wow, I could fit the whole family in here, and I can do this. Which is, I'm glad there's not an actual camera on our speedometer right now, is what I can say.
I mean, he usually drives around 35, 40. We're doing 65, 70.
I do. I drive like such an old man.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things, Chris, about doing these ride-alongs, is that we get a chance to get out and have a little bit of fun. I mean, we're on the side streets, guys. We're not doing anything crazy. We're not out ditch banging or something nuts like that.
As he's on his cell phone.
I 100% am letting Justin know that we are driving by him here in 2 seconds. So yeah, I absolutely do have a family car these days, Chris, and it means that I don't get out and have a lot of fun in the full-size truck that has the power. I do drive a compound turbocharged diesel vehicle, but it's nothing like this. There's no S369 under the hood, spooling up and taking off.
I'm pretty sure the secondary turbocharger in your SUV is smaller than the factory one on this.
Yeah, it 100% is. So that's one of the things and we've driven a lot of these LMLs that have a Stealth 64 or a Stealth 67 in them as a single.
Nice.
And they drive great.
Nice.
I love them. Mike Gutshell's truck, you've driven Mike's truck. It's a blast. It feels great. It spools up. It takes off.
Now there's the but.
Yeah. This is just better. I mean, there's no other way to put it, is that this truck, to go out and drive this truck in every way, under every circumstance, is better. And honestly, I think if you put somebody in here who didn't know a lot about diesel performance, they would never know this is a twin turbo truck.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's really cool, I remember, I'm not going to mention names or anything, but we we go to an event last year, and I had used my my 2015 for the display for the booth.
Right.
It had the hood popped. And some people walked by and they go, I don't know why these people would even consider leaving this truck here on display. It's stock. And his buddy looks at him and goes, well, you see that right there? And they're staring at the turbochargers. And he goes, that's not the stock turbocharger. There's another one under there. And then all hell broke loose. They were like asking questions, then they were excited. So it's one of those things where, the day of judging a vehicle by the way it sounds, whether it's exhaust note or by in the cab, that doesn't mean much, because you just get in this thing, it feels completely factory.
I think that also speaks to the quality of work from our sponsor over at Jason Worley at WC Fab, about like when we say it's factory-like fitment, we mean guys will walk by and think this is from the factory, because it really is just,
I would just go straight in the
that clean and that legit of a look to it. And man, just like we said before, there is nothing like
half throttle, under half throttle.
30 miles an hour you lay on it.
You just get into it and it just picks right up.
It always
it's very
responds
smooth.
the same.
Very, very consistent, smooth power. Man, I just remember back in the old days when I had my VP44 truck, and I mean, that truck wasn't even making as much power as this. And it was that big single, tons of smoke, very erratic. The engine would pop, clink, clutter, and then the turbo would come to life. And I mean, it threw you in the seat.
Well, and also, like, I know I've driven many trucks set up near there, and it always feels like your throttle is on a pindle, where like at any moment you could just tip too far, and then all of a sudden you get all the power. And if you're trying to drive just like normal through town or like speed up just a little bit, it's like slug, wham, just whacked in the ass.
This is very, you can drive this truck by the throttle.
Yeah.
You can judge exactly what this truck is going to do. You can identify the power and when it's going to come in. Like, it's a very consistent feel.
Absolutely.
But that goes back to drivability.
Right. And we're going to have another Diesel Insights video coming out soon over at Duramax Tuner, guys. Make sure to check it out. It's on what is drivability, because I think that's something that's a very confused, very loosely used.
Yeah, it's a loose term, and the drivability term is only as good as the company or tuner that's talking about it. So yes, you can throw a big S400 on a truck as a single with big 150 overs and dual injection pumps, stroker or non-stroker pumps, and you can make that truck drivable.
Right.
With a setup like that, though, guys, you have to relearn how to drive that truck, which comes into play with the setup to make it drivable. You're not just going to throw the keys to your buddy, say, hey, drive it, and they're going to know how to drive that truck through and through.
How many times does somebody ask you to help troubleshoot their truck? You get in the cab, and you go to drive it, and you're like, okay, well, I noticed this. They're like, yeah, but if you just
drive
work
around
the throttle a little bit this way and that way, you won't have that problem. And
drivability as far as from me is I can get into a truck at a higher horsepower output and drive the truck as a novice operator as I would a factory truck. No dead spots. No, I have to apply the throttle at a certain RPM window to get the truck to do what I want it to, or to get the turbo to build boost, or I can't apply the throttle this aggressively because if I do, it's going to blow a bunch of smoke. Or if I want the turbo in motion, I can't overfuel the truck because I don't want it to flood out. Like, there are all these different things. Or the transmission hangs in between shifts because the tuner had to manipulate the trans to shift that way to keep the turbo happy. There are so many different areas of how the truck operates that fall back into, again, what we claim or consider drivability.
Right, and I think Nick found a really concise way to put it, and he's like, drivability really just boils down to the truck responding the way you expect it to on in a consistent manner. Which makes sense, and that's why we say it doesn't matter what range we're at, what speed we're at. It doesn't matter what we're doing with this setup. It's always there. It's always exactly what you would expect. And yeah, it's not going to be your fastest truck at the quarter mile. It's probably not going to kill it at every sled pull it goes to.
But that's also not what it was set up for.
Right, and that's my thing. It is going to be a truck that every single time you drive it, you're like, I'm happy. Like, I really do believe that, like, this is one of those trucks you drive.
I spent the extra money. I bought a Denali or an LTZ or a High Country or any LML for that matter. I mean, you could easily go and spend $10,000, $15,000 on an older LBZ, LB7, LLY truck, or even an LMM. But you bought the newer Duramax. You like you know, the creature comforts and offerings that that platform offers, and then you can build a setup, something like this, that allows the truck to perform the way it looks. Simple as that.
God, yes.
So
it really is. Just every time I hit this throttle, man, it brings a smile on my face.
it's fun. You know, we haven't done one of these ride-alongs in a while. We've talked about it for a while.
I know. I did the last one with Nick in that 2020 in the middle of an actual blizzard.
I think I was dying with pneumonia or something.
Yes.
Then.
Yeah. You were being a little girl calling in sick. But no, listen, guys. This today has been a blast. We love coming out in these trucks. We love doing these trucks. If you're in our area or you want to come drop your truck off, we'd be happy to feature one of your trucks on the show.
If you request for Paul not to drive, completely respectable. We can make that happen as well. So no worries there.
Sure. For today, this has been Paul Wilson
and Chris Hemke, guys. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.